How does Bitcoin solve this issue of trust? This issue of trust has been studied in length by computer scientists. In fact, it's such an important concept that it even has its own name, the Byzantine generals problem. To understand the Byzantine generals problem, imagine a group of generals of the Byzantine army camped with their troops around an enemy city. The generals must rely on messenger to communicate with each other, and in order to successfully attack, need to agree on one common battle plan. However, one or more of them may be traitors who will try to confuse the others, so they cannot reliably send messages to each other. The problem is to find an algorithm to ensure that the loyal generals will reach agreement and thus be able to launch a successful attack despite any actions by the traitors. In terms of computer science, the Byzantine generals problem poses the question of how to establish trust between otherwise unrelated parties over an untrusted network like the internet. Or more specifically, how can people use the internet to transfer a unique piece of digital property to another internet user in such a way that it's both safe and publicly recognized as legitimate? Going back to our generals, this is asking how they can reliably communicate without fear that messages are being lost or altered by the traitors. And while we've been discussing this in the context of transferring digital money, the application could potentially apply to other types of digital property, from signatures in contracts to ownership of physical assets like cars or houses. Bitcoin approaches this problem by giving every Bitcoin and every user unique identifying codes. These codes are what are recorded on the ledger, and ownership of a Bitcoin is demonstrated by matching a user code to a Bitcoin code. This is then recorded in what is called the blockchain, which is the digital ledger that every computer in the network maintains. We'll expand on this a little later in the course, but the basics are that if 51% of the network records ownership, then it is recognized as legitimate and becomes a permanent part of the blockchain going forward. The purpose of this 51% threshold is that in order to do a fake transaction and have it work, that person would need to control enough processing power to gain control of more than 51% of the network, which is a massive amount and becomes practically impossible as the network grows. When you subsequently decide to sell your Bitcoin, you transfer the unique identifying code over to another user, and this is again publicly recorded on the blockchain. Through this network then, we have a coherent system to establish property ownership and to facilitate the transfer of that property without needing to go through a central intermediary.